Today, I will list 5 problems I have with modern football fans. I've been watching the sport since 2010, and now in 2023, I've noticed a dramatic change in how people view and discuss the game with each other, and I don't think it's a good one. I'm not trying to tell people how they should discuss the sport, but these are just problems I have with the behaviors of some fans. Number 1, no one watches games. This is the first problem I'm discussing, mainly because this issue influences all of the other issues. People don't really watch many football matches anymore. This is perfectly okay if you're just a casual fan and you don't really engage in much of the football discussions or debates. Also, I understand people have lives and jobs outside of watching football. Again, if you can't watch games, it's completely understandable, and this isn't necessarily targeted towards you. But I do have an issue with people who watch one game each weekend and talk as though they are experts. In the US, from what I've noticed, people don't watch any games that are outside of the big teams. If we look at the Premier League, most American fans only watch games that include the Big Six teams and they pretend like the rest of the league doesn't exist. The Big Six bias is so frustrating because it's almost impossible to talk about players and teams outside of that group because people don't watch them enough to have an educated opinion on them. In England, I've noticed that a lot of people only watch their team play each weekend. Again, this is fine until you start talking about other teams and players that you've only watched play twice all year, and those 2 times coming against your own team. English football fans don't watch many games each weekend, but still think they sit on this footballing knowledge high ground compared to the rest of the world. I watch about 6 or 7 Premier League games each weekend, and I'm not going to let some English lad named Harvey tell me that I don't know anything about football just because I'm American, even though he only watches the match highlights on his phone. The final issue I have regarding this topic is with football content creators. I actually can't stand the creators who don't watch any games or know anything about football but make a living off of making videos. I'm not saying this out of jealousy. Fair play to the people who have made a career for themselves through football content. They sit in front of their camera and spew garbage at their viewers and everyone eats it up. I won't name any names, but there are probably a few creators that you think of when I mention this. This actually inspired me to start making videos. I saw so many people who are clueless about the sport be successful, so I decided I should give it a try as well. I don't watch like 300 games a year for no reason, so I might as well give it a go. Number 2, looking at players as just their price tags. This one has been a growing issue, especially over the past few years. People are incapable of actually analyzing a player for what happens on the field. Instead, they only look at their price tag as a way to evaluate these players. The amount of times I hear stuff like, this player is good, but is he worth 80 mil? He's been good, but not good enough for 50 mil. What does this even mean? What are you using to decide what makes a player a certain amount of money or not? The amount of money in the game today is crazy, so I don't even see the point in obsessing over players' price tags. It won't define how good a player is or how good a player will be. For example, I've heard many people say Harry Maguire hasn't been good enough for 80 mil. He hasn't been good at all. I don't care about how much a player's price is, they should be expected to play well. Using this price tag logic, would it be acceptable for a player that only costs 5 mil to play poorly? The answer is obviously no. Just because a player costs 100 mil doesn't mean that they will or should meet your expectations. It also doesn't mean that the player will automatically become the next Messi. A price tag doesn't magically add more or a special ability to a player. They are not playing for you, they are playing for the manager. I doubt Pep Guardiola looks at Jack Grealish and just sees 100 mil. He looks at him and sees a player that he wants to incorporate into his system, no matter the price tag. I'm not saying that price tags nowadays aren't crazy. All I'm saying is that looking at players as just their price tags is lazy and shows a lack of knowledge. And this is just something I would never do. I look at players for what they do on the field, not how much a club spent on them. Number 3. This next one might not be a massive issue, but it does kind of annoy me a little bit. I just simply can't take anyone seriously if they have players that they have never watched live in their favorite players of all time lists. How can a player become your favorite if you've never watched him play? Also, watching highlights doesn't count for me either. If you watch full games of these players that played 5 years before you were born, then fair enough, but most people realistically don't do that. I remember seeing someone make a TikTok one day listing their top 20 favorite players of all time, and his 6th favorite player of all time was Bobby Moore. Huge respect to Bobby Moore, but I actually couldn't believe what I was seeing. All of my favorite players of all time are players that I've actually watched with my own 2 eyes in a live match. I will never put a player that played in the 60s into my favorite players of all time because that just doesn't make any sense at all. I see a lot of this happen even with more recent legends like Thierry Henry. People just feel like they need to put these players into their favorites list because they think it's the right thing to do and because they support the club these legends played for. Most Arsenal fans my age have never watched Henry play for Arsenal, so why am I hearing him in people's favorite players? Again, this is a minor issue, but I think it's just strange behavior. Number 4. People policing which football clubs you're allowed to support or using the club you support against you. First, I'm not a big fan of people policing the clubs that people are allowed to support, and this policing mostly is used against Americans, and usually English people are at the forefront of the attack. A lot of English people have the idea that you are required to support a club that is in your country. I, as an American, am supposedly not allowed to support an English club because I have to support my local club. The people that are obsessed with supporting your local are just very emotional, live in their own fantasy world. Also, a lot of people in England support clubs that aren't even in their city, and they don't actually support their local clubs, like the real local clubs. Also, this seems to only be an issue that people have with people from the United States, because when people from South American countries or Asian countries support English teams, no one says a word. The second part of this issue occurs when people use the club you support against you. Sometimes it seems like you're only allowed to criticize how a big club plays if you yourself support a big club. For example, if a Bournemouth fan criticizes Chelsea, the response is always, "You support Bournemouth, so you can't even talk." That just doesn't make any sense and is a bit arrogant. And I understand there's a lot of banter behind that, but it's also very serious at times too. You can speak on everything no matter the club you support. Number 5. This next issue is probably the one that makes me the most upset. I can't stand when people obsess over stuff that happens off the field and use it when analyzing a player's ability or a match. And I'm not talking about stuff that directly affects the player or match. I'm talking more so about interviews and off-the-field controversies. For example, the internet went crazy after Canada's loss to Belgium at the World Cup. Canada's manager, John Herdman, said, "We have to go and F Croatia." People blew this out of proportion and viewed it as disrespect towards Croatia when there was no disrespect towards Croatia at all. Then when Croatia smashed Canada 4-1, all that people talked about was, "Oh my God, Canada got what they deserved for disrespecting Croatia," or, "Oh my God, Croatia was so motivated because of that interview." When in reality, the interview had no effect on the game. Why on earth would Croatia need an interview to motivate them? They already needed to win the game. Also, Canada losing had nothing to do with the interview. Croatia is just miles better and outclassed them for 75 out of the 90 minutes. Another example of this was the Almiron and Jack Grealish situation. Grealish publicly disrespected Miguel Almiron during Man City's trophy celebration in 2022, and the situation was talked about for the entire season. It seemed like all of Miguel Almiron's success for the 2 months that he played well was attributed to Grealish slating him. Instead of praising Eddie Howe for getting the best out of bad players, people were acting like Almiron was only scoring because Grealish called him bad. It's just so ridiculous, and the fact that people play into these ideas is just nuts. If you got this far into the video, thanks for watching, and I really appreciate it. If you disagree with anything, feel free to put your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will try to respond to everyone. Also, let me know what issues you have with football fans, and tell me what videos you want to see from me. Again, thanks for watching.